I'm hopeful that there'll soon be a movement to make us more united, and that there'll be more people with influence who will shine a light on the detrimental effects of the division. You know, we need some new age politicians who actually care about the well-being of their constituents and call out their colleagues for working against it. I'm hopeful. Hello again. Welcome to The Ruthless Truth. I am your host, Truth Davis. In this forum, I share opinions, thoughts, truths on a wide variety of topics based on what I believe to be a unique life experience. And you can read more about that in the notes and in the bio. My intent is to share stories and hopefully provide some life and career lessons that will help you on your journey. Please follow me at Instagram at TruthDavis5. General format, I'll share some initial thoughts on current news or just my thoughts. Then I'll have a deeper discussion on one topic in today's truth. And then I like to finish with an American fun history fact. Okay. First, let me just say thank you. Thank you for listening and for all the positive feedback. The Ruthless Truth launched on May 15th, so this week marks our 3-month anniversary. Initially, I didn't think much of the 3-month mark until I recently reviewed some podcast statistics. Currently, there are over 2.8 million podcasts available on Apple Podcasts, but 90% of them don't make it past 3 episodes. And of those that do make it at least to a 4th episode, over 90% of them never make it to a 20th episode. So only 1 to 2% of all podcasts publish at least 20 episodes. Well, rest assured, I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon. I'm just getting started, and I'm looking forward to bringing you the truth for months and years to come. Again, thank you so much for the support. Let me know if there's some topics you'd like to see discussed. Please share your favorite episodes with others, and also engage by following at TruthDavis5 on Instagram. Okay, let's get to today's truth. Today's truth. I want to discuss the current state of our country, which I described as the divided states of America. Now, I know I have said on many occasions that I don't discuss politics on this platform, but I really don't view this as a political discussion. This is more of a civics conversation, and there are some political elements to it. But I'm not going to get into red versus blue, nor will I mention any current politicians by name, because politics is emotional. And while I'm not devoid of emotion, I'm not an emotional person. I deal with facts and truth, not emotions and judgment. So today, I'm going to come a little hard as I discuss this nation of ours. It's clear to me that while there are over 330 million people in the United States, most of the people really don't understand how this country works. They don't really know their own country. Well, today, we're going to have some serious discussion about this country, past and present. And my intent is to enlighten some of you, and as a result, equip you to better live and operate in this land of milk and honey. And let me preempt the so-called patriots who believe that anyone who badmouths the USA hates America. They resort to their familiar refrain of, love it or leave it, buddy. This is such bullshit. You can love the country, but still be aware of the flaws and issues. Most of you love your parents, but you never agreed with everything they said or did. The same is true for friends, children, or spouse. Although I agree with my spouse most of the time. You know, you don't make it to 35 years of marriage without picking up something along the way. See what I did there? Okay. We're allowed to be honest about people and places we love. So an ongoing refrain in the media and elsewhere is that America has never been more divided than it is today. The prevailing thinking is that we are devolving into two Americas, one red, one blue. The hostility, anger, and hateful rhetoric on each side is at an all-time high, and that it's only going to get worse. But let's consider a few key questions. Is it really as bad as people make it sound? Are we really that far apart on every major issue? If so, what must happen for the situation to improve? And does everyone actually see it as a problem? Why does it seem like it won't get better, only worse? Okay, let me start with this. This is America. And since the inception of our great nation, whenever there's a question of why something is happening or why things are the way they are, the overwhelmingly likely answer is power and money. This country's always been about money. The American Revolution, it was about money. Yeah, there may have been some issues with religious freedom, but the key reasons for the revolt were taxes, restrictions on currency, and imperial debt. Slavery, all about money. I mean, how profitable would your manufacturing or business operations be if you had no labor cost? And only a small percentage of white citizens actually owned slaves. It was only 2% nationwide and just 25% in the southern states. But they were able to use white supremacy to solidify support for the institution for most white Southerners, where even non-slave owners benefited from the economic rewards. The Iran-Iraq War lasted 8 years. Why? Why did America get involved and support Iraq? To protect and preserve access to foreign oil. And then there's healthcare. When's the last time you heard a major announcement about some disease being cured? You haven't. Because there's no money in curing disease. The money is in treatment. Could they find a cure for diabetes? I really don't know. But what I do know is the treatment of diabetes is over a $400 billion industry in the United States alone. A cure would wipe most of that out. So how much incentive is there really to find a cure? And so on and so on. Bringing us to today. So again, the narrative is we are so divided. But is that really true? Let's look at some objective data. First, here are some issues that the majority of Americans agree on and think are important. Safe communities, good schools for our kids, freedom of speech, privacy, and religion, affordable health care. We also have strong support for the military, the police, and for veterans. Most of us want a fair playing field. And over 90% of us agree that people deserve equal treatment under the law. And over 80% of us believe in a soul or spirit or a higher power. We also have some very common concerns, such as housing costs, inflation, taxes. I once heard someone say, everyone's a conservative on April 15th. Social Security, Russia and China, crime and public safety. We're worried about AI and scammers and our kids spending too much time on their phones. So on many, many key issues, we really aren't all that divided. Now, that said, there are some issues where we are clearly and truly divided. Even so, we're not as divided as you think. Abortion, clearly polarizing. Still, over 60% of Americans think it should be legal in some form. Gun rights, over 70% of us support gun permits and background checks. Immigration, over 70% of us believe immigration is beneficial. We just sharply disagree on how it should be managed. Racism. Our disagreement isn't so much the existence of racism, but more its prevalence or impact, meaning how big of a deal is it really? Some people think it's a really big deal. Some people think it's almost immaterial. So we actually agree more than we disagree. The majority of Americans don't enjoy this divisiveness. All the negative energy and emotions are stressful. Most people don't enjoy the feelings of fear, hate, resentment, and anger. But these sentiments are on the increase. So why aren't there more successful efforts to close the divide? I'll tell you why. Because the people most able to close the divide and help unite the nation don't want to do it. They want the divisiveness. They want the hate, the cultural wars, the fear, and the angst. Why? Power and money. Let's look at 3 of the key groups who most benefit from a divided states of America. Okay, first, politicians. At every level, local, state, and federal. Please, please don't ever forget the number one priority for politicians is re-election. Political office is a great gig, full of perks, both monetary and non-monetary. And once a person gets a taste of power, money, prestige, they don't want to let it go. I mean, you can argue with me if you want, but I truly believe the reason the Democrats had no chance in the 2024 presidential election is because Joe Biden didn't want to give up power. He should have never chosen to run for re-election. If you recall, in 2020, he all but said he wasn't going to run for re-election. But I guess when you badly wanted something for 40 years and you finally get it, it's hard to let it go. May have been even harder for his wife. You know, for the majority of this country's history, politicians earned re-election by governing. They developed policies. They authored bills in an effort to bring improvements and benefits to their constituents. Then they would campaign on their accomplishments, listing all the ways they had helped the community. In the 1990s, Newt Gingrich was House Speaker and led the battle between conservative Republicans and Bill Clinton. Still, despite their very public adversarial relationship, they were able to work together to pass major bipartisan legislation, most notably welfare reform. They governed. Now, the key to getting elected is to keep your political opponents from getting anything done. Politicians actually campaign on, I stopped them. Well, this only works if your constituents are so blinded by rage and hate of the opposition that all they care about is keeping the other side down, not even realizing their own life situation is not improving in any way. Politicians manipulate the masses by appealing to highly emotional and divisive issues that get people fired up, but in no way improves their lives. Confederate statues, gay marriage, the 10 Commandments in schools, abortion, reparations, the environment, transgender, socialism. People get loud and fired up, pick sides, and they battle. But here's the thing. For the majority of Americans, these issues are afar. Transgender people constitute less than 1% of the U.S. population. Most people have never seen a trans person, much less met one, but people get emotional about it. On another issue, I have a friend that is maniacally opposed to gay marriage. And so one day I just asked him, how does two gay people getting married in any way affect you? And don't talk about the sanctity of marriage because you've been divorced twice. No answer. Whether a Confederate flag or statue goes up or stays down, so what? Did school quality improve? Is there more money in your paycheck? Is your community safer? So for politicians, this is great. They don't have to pass any legislation. They don't have to work with the other side. They don't have to strategize and compromise. They don't have to work. Just keep stoking the fire. Okay. The next group who loves the divisiveness is the media. Okay. So if re-election is the most important thing for politicians, what does the media most care about? Ratings, audience size. And why? Because the higher the ratings, the more they can charge for advertising. More money. Media outlets know nothing attracts viewers and listeners more than emotionally charged outrage and content. They know that us versus them drives strong loyalties and then oppositional hostility, and it keeps people engaged, which means more eyes, more ears, more clicks. When I was chief marketing officer at LifeLock, I had in place promotional and sponsorship agreements with nearly every conservative radio talk host. I had agreements with Rush, Hannity, Beck, Huckabee, and many others. Pretty much the only ones I didn't have was Michael Savage because I think he's a lunatic, and Laura Ingraham, who just wouldn't do it. So why did I spend so much money with these people? Because they drove users to my business. At that time, 10% of LifeLock's total business came from Rush Limbaugh. But here's the thing that people lose sight of. These people were entertainers. All they wanted to do was keep their audience fired up, and they knew which buttons to push. I've had one-on-one sessions with Glenn Beck in his office. Same for Sean Hannity. Off mic, they're calm, reasonable people. I would even describe Glenn Beck as soft-spoken. But I'll tell you this, while they were loudly opposed to Obama's re-election campaign when they were on air, quietly, they were thrilled that he won in 2012 because that meant they had another 4 years of an angry base to appeal to. Their audiences would have shrunk had Romney won. I actually don't know if they even believe the things they say because it really doesn't matter. They'll say what they need to say to keep their audience engaged. The final key audience that profits from divisiveness, billionaires and corporations. You know, most people can only focus on a few things at a time. So all the time that Americans spend hating, accusing, and attacking the other side, it's time they're not spending demanding more from businesses. There are a couple dimensions to this benefit. First, businesses don't have to spend as much on wages and benefits or investing in training or education or support for small business. So they get to keep more money in their pocket. Second, while keeping voters distracted, people don't realize how much money businesses and billionaires are investing in the campaigns and careers of politicians. And why do they spend this money? To influence policy, such as tax breaks, subsidies, regulations, and other items to increase their competitive advantage and increase their profits. They love watching middle-class people expend all this energy on the divisiveness. That few are paying attention to how the system continues to work against them. So are we really divided? Well, to some degree, yeah. There's always been and always will be political division. People are entitled to their beliefs and opinions, and they have the right to express them. It's one of the things that makes this country great. But the efforts to maintain the divisiveness will continue until more people wake up and realize that while this us versus them may make them feel better by sticking it to the other side, is really not the way to make things better. I'm hopeful that there'll soon be a movement to make us more united, and that there'll be more people with influence who will shine a light on the detrimental effects of the division. We need some new age politicians who actually care about the well-being of their constituents and call out their colleagues for working against it. I'm hopeful. Well, let's get to today's American History Fun Fact. Today's American History Fun Fact. I want to look at the California gold rush of the 1840s and profile two key players who had very different fate. So, Samuel Brannan was born in Massachusetts in 1819 and raised in the Mormon Church. He rose to be a top official in the Mormon community. He was also the publisher of the Prophet newspaper. Well, after the assassination of Prophet Joseph Smith in 1844, hostilities against the church increased, and many of the elders began relocating or moving to Illinois, leaving Brannan as the highest-ranking leader in New York. But later, Brannan led an expedition of Mormons to relocate in San Francisco. His vision was to establish a new Mormon community and home near the Sacramento River, where he believed they could have a real refuge and religious freedom. However, in 1847, the Mormon leaders and Brigham Young rejected his proposal and chose to settle in what is now Salt Lake City. So with his dreams dashed, Brannan used his printing press to establish the California Star, the first newspaper in San Francisco. The first issue was published in January 1847. Now, in 1848, Swiss immigrant and Sacramento pioneer John Sutter was building a lumber mill known as Sutter's Mill near Coloma on the American River. His vision was to build a city, including housing and a wharf, but he needed lumber for the construction. So Sutter hired James Marshall to lead the building of the mill. Well, on the morning of January 24th, 1848, Marshall found some shiny metal in the water, and he took it to Sutter. And after some research and testing, they concluded that it was gold. Technically, at the time of the discovery, California was still owned by Mexico. But a week later, the war ended and Mexico ceded California to the U.S. long before the discovery of gold had become public. So was Sutter excited about this discovery? No, he was not. He was actually concerned. He was worried that if the news got out, a potential gold rush would ruin his plans for building an agricultural empire. So he swore everybody working on the mill to secrecy. He also wanted to quickly secure rights to all the land around the discovery, so he sent his man Charles Bennett to secure mineral rights and land rights. But on a couple of occasions, Bennett blurted out that they had found gold. And then to make it worse, Bennett was unsuccessful in obtaining the land and mineral rights that Sutter wanted so badly. Well, by this time, Samuel Brannan had opened a store near Sutter in what is now Sacramento. Brannan grew suspicious when he noticed that some of Marshall's crew were making purchases with gold. And as the owner of the only store between San Francisco and the gold region, Brannan saw an opportunity. He bought up all the picks, all the shovels, all the mining pans available in the entire region. Then, in March 1848, he wanted to publish the news of the gold discovery, but he couldn't. All of his employees had abandoned him and rushed to Sutter's Mill to look for gold. So Brannan began walking the streets of San Francisco, holding up a vial of gold and shouting, "Gold! Gold on the American River." Well, from there the rush was on. And those pans that Samuel Brannan had purchased for just 20 cents, he was selling them for $15. He made $36,000 in just 9 weeks. As for Sutter, just as he feared, his business plans were ruined after all his workers left in search of gold. And then squatters took over his land and stole his crops and cattle. So to avoid a total loss, Sutter deeded his remaining property to his son, John Sutter, Jr. The younger Sutter saw the commercial possibilities of the land and promptly started plans for building a new town that he named Sacramento. And so while John Sutter never really profited from the gold rush, he still has an impressive legacy in California as one of the founders and leaders for building Sacramento. As for Samuel Brannan, well, he fully abandoned his Mormon church activities and continued to expand his business, opening several stores to service the surging new population. California population increased 300% from 1850 to 1860. Additional, Brannan purchased large parcels of land in Sacramento, Southern California, and Hawaii, and he went on to become California's first millionaire. That's all I have today on The Ruthless Truth. Again, thank you so much for listening, following at Instagram at TruthDavis5. Again, share your comments, share your input. In addition to Instagram, there's also Ruthless Truth on Facebook and YouTube. So, thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.